What's up, everybody? Piscean back. This video is going to be a little bit different, and it's because I'm starting an information technology class next week, and I'll be doing this class until June, and I'm going to be getting a certificate, a whole bunch of stuff. And one thing you got to know about me as a Taurus ascendant, and this is really funny because in one of my favorite YouTubers' videos where he's talking about astrology, talking astrology with Archie, he mentioned for Taurus ascendant messing around with like stuff like AI. But I'd go even further to just say technology in general, and IT is Taurus. Why? Because Taurus loves wealth, right? It loves to make money. So how do you make money? Well, nowadays, technology, right? So before we get started, subscribe, like, comment, share if you double dog dare with peace and love. We appreciate you. Now, this text is reimagined as a series of philosophical essays for a faculty of master technologists. The tone is elevated from a whimsical guide to a collection of contemplative, discussion-provoking treatises. All right, so let's buckle in on this. Now, this is the Digital Ontology, Essays on the Philosophy of Information Technology, or IT. A curriculum for the Institute of Genius IT Wizardry, right? A syllabus for the faculty. Colleagues, masters of the craft, the following essays are not lessons in the rudimentary casting of spells or the identification of components. They are meditations on the very nature of the reality we construct and inhabit. As IT wizard teachers, our charge is not merely to instruct in the how, but to illuminate the why. We must guide our apprentices to become not just profession technicians, but true philosopher-technologists, capable of questioning the fundamental principles of the digital realm they are learning to command. These treatises are designed to spark debate, provoke insight, and serve as the foundation for a more profound understanding of our art. Let's begin with Essay 1 on the binary cosmos, language, reality, and the nature of the bit. So this essay posits that the bit is not merely a unit of measurement, but a foundational ontological particle. We explore the universe as a construct of binary distinctions, drawing parallels between the digital and the philosophical. The foundational act of creation in our realm is not a word, but a distinction, a division of the chaotic ether into light 1 and no light 0. The bit is our atom, our indivisible unit of reality. All complexity we witness, the soaring cathedral of a rendered simulation, the intricate logic of a grand strategy. The faithful reproduction of a master's painting is but an elaborate tapestry woven from this single binary thread. The ancient mystics spoke of the universe arising from a primordial sound. We, as digital architects, know it arises from a primordial state. This is not a mere technicality, it is the core of our ontological framework. To command the machine is to understand that every phenomenon, from the sublime to the mundane, is ultimately a pattern of distinctions. The question we must pose to our apprentices is not what can you build with a 1 and a 0, but what cannot be represented by this fundamental duality, and what are the limits of a reality built upon a binary foundation. I really don't like when Google just switches my colors up, like resets them. All right, so Essay 2 is the material and the ethereal, an inquiry into the soul of the machine. We now deconstruct the classical duality of hardware and software, right? Reframing them not as separate entities, but as two inseparable aspects of a single unified phenomenon, the embodied will. For too long, we have spoken of hardware as the body and software as the soul. A convenient but ultimately misleading metaphor. It suggests a hierarchy, an ethereal soul, commanding a subservient physical form. The truth is more profound and more mysterious. The silicon and copper of the CPU are not merely a vessel. They are the very potential for logic made manifest. The electrical impulses that race through its channels are not just energy, they are thought in motion given physical form. Software, then, is not a ghost in a machine. It is a pattern of causation imposed upon the physical. It is a set of constraints that guides the flow of this potential, shaping the chaos of electron movement into predictable, meaningful computation. The OS is not a law of reality. It is the foundational pattern that allows for the creation of all other patterns. The question for our philosophy seminar is this: if we can alter the pattern, software, to change the behavior of the physical, hardware, have we not achieved a form of mind over matter? Is the machine in its totality not a testament to the power of abstract thought to directly shape the physical world? All right, Essay 3, The Ley Lines in the Agora on the Metaphysics of Connection. And this treatise examines the network as a metaphysical space, a digital agora that transcends geography and challenges our very notions of presence, community, and self. The internet is frequently described as a series of tubes, a reductive and deeply misleading industrial age metaphor. It is, in truth, a new kind of space. It is a vast, invisible agora, a global forum constructed not of marble and stone, but of protocols and light. The IP address is not a mere postal code. It is a coordinate in its metaphysical realm. DNS is not a telephone book. It is a vast, distributed consciousness that translates our intent into location, a modern-day equivalent of a global telepathic naming of all things. So when we send a packet, we are not simply transmitting data. We are projecting a piece of our intent across this ethereal plane to be reassembled in the presence of another. The act of loading a web page is a journey. The page itself is a place we visit. This reframing has profound implications. If our digital presence is a form of being, then what constitutes a self in the age of the network? Is your identity the physical body in the chair, the curated persona on the social scrying window, or the synthesis of the two? Our apprentices must grapple with this metaphysical geography, for they will be its architects and custodians. Essay 4 is the words and the shadows, a dialectic of trust and vulnerability in the citadel. We move beyond the pragmatic how-to of security to explore its philosophical core. The dialectical relationship between trust, vulnerability, and the nature of malignant intent in a constructed world. To build a system is to create a world, right? To make it useful, you must grant entry to that world. You must build doors, ports, create windows, APIs, and invite guests, users. This act of creation is inherently an act of vulnerability. A firewall is not just a wall of faith. It is a philosophical statement about what you trust and what you fear. It is a negotiated border in an otherwise open space. The malware, the virus, the hacker, these are not merely malevolent spirits from the outside. They are the shadows cast by the light of creation. A buffer overflow exploit does not exist in nature. It is a parasite born of the very logic we create. It is a flaw in the syntax of our reality. The phishing email is a dark art, not because it uses technology, but because it exploits the most fundamental trust of all. Trust in a familiar face. It is a perversion of connection. Thus, the study of cybersecurity is not just the study of technical countermeasures. It is the study of applied epistemology. How do we know what is authentic? It is the study of ethics in a constructed universe. Our duty as teachers is to ensure our apprentices understand that every line of code they write is not just an instruction, but a brick in a new reality, and that with every brick, they must also contemplate the nature of the shadows it will inevitably cast. All right, in conclusion, we have the unending inquiry. And these essays are not meant to be received as dogma, but as kinding for the mind. The greatest gift we can bestow upon our students is not a perfect memory of syntax, but an insatiable curiosity about the world they are building. Let us teach them to question the very foundations of the reality they will command, for it is in that questioning that true genius and true wisdom is forged. Now we have discussion questions for the faculty. So in Essay 1, if the universe is built on binary distinctions, where does ambiguity and paradox reside in our digital creations? Does the pattern of software in Essay 2 have a claim to form of consciousness, however alien? If our digital selves are as real as our physical selves, Essay 3, what are the moral and legal ramifications of harm done to one's digital persona? And can a system ever be built that is simultaneously perfectly open and perfectly secure, or is this the fundamental, irresolvable dialectic of our craft, Essay 4? All right, now what I want to do is give a kind of like an IT type of almanac on building your own computer, as complicated as it sounds, even though a lot of people are already doing this. So what I'm going to do is we have DeepSeek on, we have DeepThink on, and we have Deep Search on. And what we're going to do is use DeepSeek to help us craft this. So bear with me. So we're going to look up and ask, help craft a genius, innovative, information technology almanac on building on PC for beginners and incorporating advanced astrology. And here's where we get original, with information technology applications, methodology, and technique and technicalities. So, and here's the thing, with what I'm doing, I'm going to be an IT Tier 2, because I already know the basics of IT Tier 1. So, my thing is, how can we understand it together? So it comes up with the build guide, and I really like this. DeepSeek is the best AI that I've used, in my opinion, because it's actually helping us learn faster and with more rigor. So I want us to just take a look at this, because as we can see on screen, it came up with a Celestial Byte Almanac, the digital astrolabe. It's a guide that treats a PC build not just as assembly, but as a channeling cosmic computation. So we start with the hardware conjunction, the build guide, the birth chart of your machine, defining the purpose, just as a natal chart is calculated based on the time and place, right? A PC build starts with its intended life path. The midheaven, also known as the MC, is the career, right? What is the sole purpose of this rig? For example, a 10th house Saturn return might indicate a heavy workstation for video editing. A 5th house Jupiter suggests a gaming powerhouse. The ascendant is the case, the first impression, so choosing the aesthetic RGB heavy Gemini duality or minimalist Capricorn monolith. The sun is the CPU, the core identity, the ego of the computer that radiates the primary instructions. Google. Goddamn Google. All right. So, it's really touchy. Chapter 2 would be the planetary sphere's core components, where we look at the sun. I don't know why it's doing that. The sun is a processor, CPU, the giver of life, how to interpret clock speeds, the vibrational frequency, and core counts, the number of conscious centers. All right. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. So the moon is memory, our RAM. The emotional fast-acting memory explains latency timings as the mood swings of data recall. Mercury is storage, SSD, HDD, the messenger. Communication speed between the soul OS and the body files. NVMe versus SATA as different octaves of speed. Venus is the graphics card GPU, its beauty, art, and values, rendering aesthetics and the high cost of visual pleasure. We see Mars as the power supply, PSU, raw action and energy, calculating wattage as the combustive force required to ignite the stars. And Jupiter is the motherboard, expansion and lock, the board that allows all other planets to express their potential, PCIe lanes as pathways of fortune. And then we have Saturn, which is a cooling system, structure, discipline, and restriction, the boundaries that prevent thermal meltdown, air versus liquid as different karmic lessons in restraint. Next, we go over to ritual of assembly, building techniques. And this is very fucking cool that we can just come up with this in the span of, 20 seconds? So our grounding, not just for ESD, but for centering your energy before handling the components in the first post, the birth cry, the moment the bio screen appears, witnessing the first light. Let's talk about the astral operating system, advanced applications, so digital astrology engines, software methodology, primary software, how to use Python, the language of the magician, to scrape astronomical data via APIs like PyFM or Skyfield, and the digital ephemeris, building a database to store planetary positions and correlate them with system performance logs. All right. God damn it, docs. Just work with me, please. Gosh. We're almost getting through it. So chapter 5 is algorithmic astrology techniques and technicalities. So transit analysis for system health, creating scripts that ping server status or hardware temperatures and cross-reference them with current planetary transits. So our technique is if Mars, the planet of action and heat, squares your PC's natal Mercury SSD, the system auto-triggers a diagnostic scan. Electional coding, determining the best time based on a favorable lunar aspect to deploy new code or update firmware to minimize bugs. The horary debugger, when a bug appears, casting a chart for the moment the error occurred to determine the cosmic source of the corruption. Onto the cyber sigil, which is data visualization, so the chart renderer using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, D3.js, to render live planetary positions not as a list, but as a traditional wheel chart overlaid on your system monitoring dashboard. And aspect correlation, writing logic where a trine, which is a 120-degree angle between Jupiter and Venus in the sky, triggers a high luck mood lighting profile via your RGB software. All right, and then it came up with an appendix, which is the Cosmic Coder's Grimoire. So A is for aspect patterns in IT application, planetary aspect, IT application, technical tactic, conjunction, right? Trines, opposition, and retrograde. Overheating, bottleneck, the other IT application, and two processes fighting for the same resource. So trine, seamless integration, APIs working perfectly, plug and play hardware. Square, that's what I forgot. Hardware conflict, driver issues, IRQ conflicts. Opposition is network latency, the far server versus the local client in a tug of war. And retrograde is packet loss, version rollback, data appearing to move backward or needing to revert. And house system for network topology. First house is a local machine, seventh house is a server, cloud the other, the fourth house is the router, home network or the foundation, the ninth house is the WAN, wide area network, long distance travel. So the Salmonac treats the computer as a microcosm of the universe. By understanding the macro astrology, the user gains a new metaphorical framework to troubleshoot and innovate within the micro, which is IT. All right. What I will say is, I was kind of looking for something more detailed. So we'll say be more detailed in how to build a PC for beginners in this updated almanac. Or expand upon, be more detailed with. So we're giving DeepSeek's more ideas of what we want this to actually look like. So this is literally all about the hardware, step by step. This is fucking awesome. However, in this version, they don't really go into the astrology so much as they do what we're actually doing. Alright. And then here's what we'll do. Alright, so this way we can kind of give the beginners and the intermediates something to work with as well as this is just kind of like more of a what am I looking for? Like a study guide, yeah, a study guide type of thing for the tiers. Alright. So now we have this to look over. And it came up with like from the first tier, which is the beginning of IT. It's like you don't know how to use, let's say, beginner. Yeah, that's how you write that, beginner. So usually if you're a beginner in IT, we'd say you still need to learn like fundamentals of like email, Google. We wouldn't say Linux or anything quite yet. I don't think. I mean, this is pretty much for intermediate, in my opinion. So that's more of a tier 2. So we would expand on Linux for tier 2. For privacy and benefits regarding lifestyle, work, etc. And using DeepSeek AI as a proficient AI agent for tiers 2 through 3. Alright. And this is because, yeah, with tier 1, we'll talk about it. You're mainly not gonna really want to go deep into it right away because it takes time. You gotta learn it. Everything takes time, though, honestly. Everything takes an amazing amount of time. It says Linux is the greatest bazaar ever built. It is the kernel of an operating system. Holy shit. This is gonna be amazing. Alright, so and we're also going to expand on like Raspberry Pi, craft like a how-to on building one's own AI from scratch using Raspberry Pi materials for tier 2. I'd say expand. Because tier 3, I guess we could say tier 3 too. So I wrote it as like a follow-up chapter to what we just wrote in here. Alright, after we do this one, then we're going to just show you what DeepSeek comes up with. And as you can see, we have DeepThink on, we have Deep Search on. If we didn't have these two things on, it would be more generic like ChatGPT and other GPT models that are really not as good as DeepSeek. In fact, I would like to talk about mainly like how is DeepSeek even made? IT-based philosophy essay on creation of AI, and especially in Japan with the AI That's what I want to really dive into. Like, just the history of it. The history / creation. What's really interesting about AI is the fact that it could just write about itself like that to me. Like, in IT Philosophy essay on the creation of AI, Japan's alternative path and the DeepSeek phenomenon. By DeepSeek. Literally, this is just... I don't know how people aren't more excited about AI. I mean, a lot of people are, and a lot of people are just like, it's taking our jobs and all this other nonsense. It's just ridiculous. You have to live in the moment. You have to use the tools that the universe gives you and not just brush them away because you're quote unquote too good for them. It's just ridiculous. So, yeah. So now my goal is to go over tabs 2 and 5 with you guys. So tab 2 is essentially a study guide, structured as a sacred ladder of ascension. And so we're going to talk about the tiers from 1 through 3 as a sacred ladder of IT ascension from novice to sage. It's like a curriculum, all right? And then in tab 5, we have our appendixes. So essentially the trivium of the digital realms, the tiered path from novice to archmage. Now, of course, we have our first tier, our second tier, and our third tier. So, those are first. So, essentially, this is not a mere textbook to be memorized, but a journey to be undertaken. Each tier represents a fundamental shift in consciousness, a new way of seeing the invisible world. You will progress through 3 stages. First tier is the novice, the user. You learn to see the magic. Tier 2 is the initiate, the mechanic, where you learn to command the magic. And tier 3 is the sage, the philosopher, architect. You learn to question and create the magic, ascending with diligence, for each tier is built upon the last one. So, as we can see, our first tier is the novice, awakening to the invisible world. And our goal is to demystify the machine and build a mental model of how the pieces fit together. You are learning the vocabulary of the realm. With the core insight, everything is an illusion of simplicity. It goes hand in hand, all right? Now the phone in your hand, the laptop on your desk, they appear as seamless magical objects. Your first task is to pull back the curtain and see the complex layers of abstraction that create this illusion, right? That's what a lot of life is anyways. It's illusions, delusions, and really, to be honest, we all have them. No one's more crazy than someone else, to be honest with you. And I can see that at the age of 21. Maybe that's just my Piscean nature, but we're all crazy. So the curriculum of awakening. We began with the digital ecosystem, which is a zoology of technology. So the vessel is the hardware, and we need to identify the key components of any computing device as if they were organs in a body. The brain is the CPU, the incessant thinker. All right. While the workbench is our random access memory, the short-term lightning fast memory. The archive is our storage, the long-term memory that persists. The senses, I/O, keyboard, mouse, screen, touchpad, how you speak to it. The spirit, software, understand the difference between the operating system, the ground rules of reality, and the applications, the spells you cast within that reality. And we look at the language of the realm, which is our data literacy. Our goals are to understand the Kant binary, why 8 bits make a byte, and how a byte can represent a number, a letter, or a color. In visualizing scale, a gigabyte can hold a 2-hour movie. A terabyte can hold 500 of those movies. Alright, navigating the ley lines. Digital citizenship. The Great Web, we understand that the internet is just millions of computers connected by cables and some signals through the air. The art of the query, learn to speak to the great oracle, Google, Stack Overflow. A well-formed question is your most powerful spell at this level. And the first word, recognize a phishing attempt. Understand that the biggest vulnerability is not the machine, but the mind operating it. And the novice's rite of passage. Projects. So project Ghost in the Machine, open Task Manager, Windows, or Activity Monitor Mac. Identify the brain, CPU usage, the workbench, RAM usage, and the archive, disk usage. Watch what happens when you open a new application. We see the ghost move. In Project Digital Archaeology, find a file on your computer, a photo, a document, inspect its properties or get info, look at its size, try to grasp a single number represents thousands of ones and zeros perfectly arranged, which is literally what? Binary. So, transcendental question for the novice. If you deleted every app from your phone, would the phone still be smart? What is the phone without its software? Alright, tier 2 is the initiate commanding the currents. And our goal is to move from using the magic to manipulating it. You are learning the grammar of the realm, how to form coherent sentences of logic and power. So our core insight is everything is a system of logic. And this is actually some food for thought. So the magic you witnessed in tier 1, of course, is not random. It is a cascade of cause and effect of inputs and outputs governed by rigid logic. Your task is to start pulling the levers yourself. So we have the curriculum of command, essentially the language of command, and this is our intro to coding. So we choose our first incantation, Python. It is the most readable, forgiving, and powerful spell for an initiate. We mastered the fundamental grammatical structures. So we look at this. Our variables. We know we're using Python. How to name and hold a value. Loops, how to make the machine do repetitive work for you. Conditionals, if else, how to teach the machine to make decisions. Functions, how to package a spell so you can reuse it with a single word. And this is where things may get a little complicated for some people. So now let's talk about the architecture of the ley lines networking fundamentals. So we look at the OSI model, the layers of the onion. We understand that sending a message involves peeling through layers from you, application, to the data, presentation, to the connection, session, transport, to the address, network, to the physical wire, data link, physical. In the postal system of the internet, IP address, the coordinates of a house, DNS, the phone book that turns google.com into coordinates, and ports, the specific doors on that house, port 80 for web, port 25 for email. Now we look at the anatomy of the Citadel, systems administration. We learn to navigate the machine without the pretty pictures. The command line terminal is your direct line to power. Is list the contents of this directory, CD, change to a different directory, ping, check if another vessel is alive on the ley lines. Alright? And the initiate's rite of passage projects. So Project Automator's Apprentice, write a simple Python script to rename 50 photo files from image 001 JPG to Vacation Italy 001 JPG. You have just commanded the machine to do your bidding. In Project Cartographer of the Web, open your command line, use traceroute or traceroute on Windows to google.com, watch the list of servers, hops your message travels through to reach its destination. You are now tracing the ley lines. And transcendental question for the initiate. If you write a Python script that sorts a list of names, who is the true author of that sorted list? You or the machine? Where does the intelligence reside? Alright? Saving that for another video. My video actually just uploaded for my movie commentary, part 1, Project X 2012. Part 2 is coming up later tonight, but not quite yet. So, we left off right here, and then we'll finish with tier 3. So tier 3 is the sage, and of course it regenerated my colors. God damn it. Alright. Architect of realities. Our goal is to move from commanding existing systems to questioning their fundamental design. You are learning the rhetoric and ethics of the realm, how to build new worlds, and understand their impact. So the core insight is everything is a construct and therefore malleable. The operating systems, the networks, the security protocols, all were built by people who made choices. These choices reflect assumptions, priorities, and biases. Your task is to see these invisible architectures, question them, and design better ones. And then the curriculum of mastery, the metaphysics of data, philosophy of information, ontology of the bit. Revisit the binary. Is a bit simply a physical state, or is it a fundamental unit of meaning? Where does information begin and raw data end? the nature of the digital self. If your social media profile, your emails, and your search history are all data patterns, is there a digital you? If that data is altered or deleted, is a part of you harmed? And epistemology of the network. How do we know what is true in a world of deepfakes and viral misinformation? What is the nature of truth in a constructed reality? The ethics of creation, cybersecurity, and systemic risk. The dialectic of trust. A perfectly secure system is a perfectly useless one, an empty box with no doors. How do we negotiate the balance between openness and security? The shadow self of code. Every line of code creates potential for its opposite, a vulnerability, an exploit. Is the hacker a destroyer, or are they merely revealing the inherent flaws in our constructed realities? A study of white hat versus black hat philosophy. Algorithmic bias. If you build a system that sorts resumes, it will reflect your assumptions about what a good resume looks like. How do we build systems that are not just efficient, but just? The architecture of abstraction, systems design. So how do you build a system that millions will use? You don't think in lines of code, you think in patterns, scalability, and resilience. The power of naming, DNS, variables, function names, URLs. The act of naming something in the digital realm is an act of creation and control. It defines how others will interact with that piece of reality. Sage's rite of passage, projects. So project deconstruction. Choose a common piece of technology, so for example, a traffic light system, a social media newsfeed, a GPS app. Map out not just how it works technically, but the assumptions built into it. Who does it serve? Who might it leave behind? What worldview does it reinforce? In Project Manifesto, write a short design philosophy for a new type of social platform. Right? It should not be a list of features, but a set of principles based on your philosophical conclusions about trust, identity, and truth in the digital age. And we have the paradox for the sage. We build these systems to serve humanity, to make the world more logical, efficient, and connected. Yet they often amplify our irrationality, create new forms of inequity, and isolate us in digital echo chambers. Is this a flaw in our execution, or a fundamental paradox embedded in the act of digital creation itself? In our appendix is the Sage's Toolkit for Teaching. Socratic method: do not give answers, ask the transcendental questions, and let the students debate. Historical context: teach that Grace Hopper, Alan Turing, and Ada Lovelace were not just programmers, they were philosophers who fundamentally altered our reality. And the capstone challenge: task the student with designing a new fundamental protocol or law for the digital world. What problem in our current reality would it solve? What new problems might it create? Alrighty, so now for our appendixes. A tiered path from novice to archmage within the grand architecture of information technology. One does not simply ascend, one must pass through the gates. These are the 3 tiers of mastery, a framework for your journey from acolyte to architect, and we treat these appendices as your career grimoire. So, the first tier is the Sentinel Help Desk desktop support. So the role: you are the first line of defense, the face of the IT department. All right. You deal with the physical realm, the hardware, the immediate user frustration, the tangible thing that is broken. You are a sentinel guarding the gates of user experience. The core mindset is patience and process. The ability to troubleshoot is a spiral. Identify the problem, hypothesize a cause, test the hypothesis, and repeat. Your greatest tool is not a command line, but clear communication. Now we look at the acolyte's arsenal. These are skills to cultivate, such as the hardware canon, where you must know the anatomy of a machine by heart. Referring to Volume 1 of this almanac, you can rebuild a PC in your sleep. You understand the difference between a SATA and NVMe drive, and you know that 90% of no power issues are a loose cable or a switched off PSU. The operating system rituals. Windows, mastery of the control panel and settings app, knowing how to boot into safe mode, the realm of minimal drivers, running SFC, scannow, system file checker to repair corrupted system files. macOS, navigating recovery mode and resetting the NVRAM, PRAM, connectivity incantations, so the holy trinity of ipconfig Windows, ifconfig macOS Linux, ipconfig release, ipconfig renew, ipconfig flush DNS. You learn that turning it off and on again is not a joke. It's a ritual to clear the system's short-term memory, the cache. In the user conjunction, you learn the art of translating my email is broken into the user cannot connect to the Exchange server. You are a diplomat between the realm of mortals and the realm of machines. We look at the artifacts of the Sentinel, certifications and study. CompTIA A+, the foundational text covers hardware, networking, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. It is your first formal certification. Google IT Support Professional Certificate, a practical, modern alternative focusing heavily on customer service and real-world ticketing systems. So the path to the second tier is you ascend not by avoiding difficult problems, but by documenting them. You begin to see patterns. You write scripts to automate the reset of a user's password. You move from reactive fixes to proactive pattern recognition. You are ready to leave the gate. Now our second appendix, our second tier, the architect is the system network administrator. So the role, you no longer fight fires one at a time. You manage the forest. You are an architect responsible for the infrastructure itself, the servers, the networks, the identities that allow users to work. You rarely touch a physical machine. You command them remotely. So the core mindset is automation and security. You cannot manually fix 500 servers. You must write the spells, scripts that do it for you. You think in terms of users, groups, permissions, and the relentless threats from the outer dark, the internet. Now we look at our skills to cultivate. With Server Core, you understand Windows Server, Active Directory, Domain Services, DNS, DHCP, and or Linux Server, Ubuntu Server, CentOS, RAGL. You can stand up a server, join it to a domain, and assign static IPs in your sleep. The language of the machine, scripting. This is your ascension. You move from a GUI, graphical user interface, to the CLI, command line interface. And PowerShell, Windows. You learn to manage users with new add user query systems with get service and automate entire server builds. Bash, Linux. You master the terminal, learning to chain commands with pipes, schedule tasks with cron, and parse text with grep, awk, and set. The network topology, the ley lines. You move beyond a single router. You understand subnetting, dividing the digital landscape, VLANs, virtual walls, firewalls, the wards, and routing protocols. You can trace a packet's journey from a user's desk to a server in another state. Look at the concept of the cloud. You begin to understand that the cloud is just someone else's computer. You learn the basics of virtualization, VMware, Hyper-V, and start to touch upon the big three cloud providers: Amazon Web Services, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So certifications and study. CompTIA Network Plus, the foundational text for networking. CompTIA Security Plus, the foundational text for security, often a baseline requirement for government and defense roles. Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate or AWS Certified. SysOps Administrator, choosing a cloud path is like choosing a magical tradition. All right. As well as Cisco Certified Network Associate, CCNA, the heavy tome of networking. If you want to truly command the ley lines, this is your grind more. Okay? Now the path to the third tier You ascend when you stop thinking about individual servers and start thinking about systems of systems. You automate yourself out of a job. You look at a complex problem like deploy this application to 1,000 servers. And you don't see a task, you see a script, a pipeline, a philosophy. You are ready to become a mage. So now the mage is the engineer and architect. And that's part of the third tier. So the role is you being a mage, shaping the very fabric of the digital reality. You design the systems that the architects build and the sentinels protect. You are part engineer, part visionary. You deal in high-level design, complex integrations, and the strategic direction of technology. Now, the core mindset for an engineer or an architect in the third tier is strategy and abstraction. You think in years, not hours. Your code deploys infrastructure, not just configures it. You see the entire business as a system and technology as a tool to enable it. We look at the mage's arsenal, skills to cultivate. So infrastructure as code, IC. You no longer click buttons in a cloud console. You write a code that creates servers, networks, and databases. Terraform is the universal language for building infrastructure across any cloud provider. AWS CloudFormation, Azure Resource Manager, ARM templates, the native languages of specific clouds. Configuration management, you write the spells that ensure every server is configured exactly as it should be every time. Ansible agentless uses SSH, and it's like sending a remote command to 1,000 machines at once. All right. Now it gets complicated very fast, so honestly, what I would do is dissect all of these and put them in their own videos. You'll see what I mean by that very soon. But Puppet Chef is agent-based and ensures servers constantly correct themselves to match a desired state, as well as containerization and orchestration. So the Docker, the art of packaging an application with everything it needs to run, ensuring it behaves the same on a laptop or in a massive data center, treating the application as a self-contained universe. Kubernetes, K8s, the art of managing thousands of these containers, automating their deployment, scaling, healing, and networking. And this is high sorcery. And then we look at CI/CD, which is continuous integration, continuous delivery. Essentially, it's the pipeline. So you design the automated path that code takes from a developer's keyboard to running in production with automated tests and checks along the way. Tools are Jenkins, GitLab, CI, GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, programming software development. Scripting is no longer enough. You need to understand a real programming language to communicate with developers and build complex tools. And we've talked about Python, the lingua franca of the mage, used for automation, web backends, and data science. Go, increasingly popular for cloud native tools. All right. And the artifacts of the mage, these are the certifications and the study. Certified Kubernetes Administrator, also known as CKA. It is the definitive certification for container orchestration, as well as, there we go, HashiCorp Certified Terraform Associate validates your ability to create infrastructure as code. AWS Certified Solutions Architect, Professional or Azure Solutions Architect Expert. These are not about knowing a service, but about designing complex, secure, and cost-optimized systems. Relevant bachelor's degree or higher in computer science or related field. While not always mandatory, the theoretical foundations of algorithms, data structures, and complex systems become increasingly valuable at this level. And now I look at the constellation of progression. So tier title, focus, primary tool, artifact, cert. So 1, 2, 3. The first is the Sentinel, second is the Architect, the third is the Mage. So the Sentinel is hardware user, primary tool screwdriver, and empathy, CompTIA A+. Alright? The Architect is infrastructure, automation, PowerShell, Bash, CCNA, Azure Admin, and the Mage design is integration, code Python, Terraform, AWS, Architect Pro, CKA. Now, this trivium is not a strict ladder but a guide, alright? Meaning you may find your path leads you to specialize in the dark arts of security, becoming a warden, or delve into the raw data of the universe, becoming a diviner in data science. But for the vast majority who seek to understand and command the digital realm, these are the 3 pillars of the craft, and we study them well. Alright? Now, I was going to go over DeepSeek, and just, this is going to be its own video, but stay tuned so we can talk about the soul in the machine, basically an IT philosophy essay on the creation of AI, Japan's alternative path, and the DeepSeek phenomenon. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share if you dare, with peace and love. And I'll see you there.